shore. 5, unfortunately, have been recovered deceased, and 8 persons remain missing. With respect to the search, the Coast Guard has searched over 9,268 square nautical miles of surface area, with a total search time of over 175 total hours in this effort. We have marshaled a tremendous force of Coast Guard resources to conduct the search, to include 4 Coast Guard cutters, 3 45-foot response boats, 6 fixed-wing aircraft, and 3 helicopters. We've also received tremendous support from the state of Louisiana and the local parishes. Louisiana Fish and Wildlife, Port Fourchon, Lafourche Parish, and Terrebonne Parish have been outstanding, providing response boats and also assisting with roving shoreline searches. We've also received great support from our DHS partner, CBP, Customs and Border Protection, who's provided air support fixed-wing asset as well. And also I want to stress that we have had tremendous support from the local maritime industry. Several Good Sams have volunteered, they've gotten engaged and supported the effort. It has been a tremendous outflow of support. While our search efforts continue, even now, we've had to make the difficult decision to suspend search and rescue efforts at sunset today. This does not mean that the case is closed. At any time, we might receive new information that would compel us to resume the search. But with that said, our focus now will begin to shift. We will continue to support and enforce the safety zone that protects the dive operations within the Seacor Power, and we will begin to give our full support to the National Transportation Safety Board that will begin to look into the hows and whys of what happened here. The chief investigator in this case for the NTSB, Mr. Drew Ellers, is here. But before I pass the microphone and podium to him, I just want to say to you all, we just came here from talking to the families. Told them what I'm telling you all now. There was a lot of hugging and a lot of crying. There was a lot of sadness and grief. But there was also a lot of hope and a lot of faith still. I just want to say to all those folks, our deepest sympathies extend to you all. Please know that the Coast Guard will work very hard in the days ahead, in the weeks ahead, in the months ahead with the NTSB to figure out what happened here so that hopefully we can learn some lessons that help us to prevent this from ever happening again. Thank you all.
Thank you, Captain. Again, my name is Drew Ellers. I'm the investigator in charge for the NTSB for the investigation into the Seacor Power accident. I'd like to start first by extending our sincerest sentiments and heartfelt sentiments to the families and also the community here who've been affected by this tragedy. The NTSB will conduct a thorough and objective investigation, but people really are at the heart of what we do, and it's why we focus on getting the answers right and making sure that we support the families and that we prevent an accident like this happening again. I will conduct the investigation. In very general terms, we're going to be looking at 3 things. The first is the people involved, both at sea and ashore. We'll be looking at the vessel and equipment, and also we'll be looking at the conditions that were there on the day of the accident. And that's really where we're starting. We're focusing on the weather. We've already enlisted the expertise of the National Weather Service and others to help us with this investigation. As the investigation goes on, we will be utilizing not only the resources of the NTSB, but we'll be enlisting the expertise and knowledge of other organizations that can help us understand the vessel and the conditions. These organizations include the U.S. Coast Guard, the National Weather Service, as previously discussed, Seacor Marine, the owner of the vessel, the operator of the vessel, and also the American Bureau of Shipping. The investigation of this complexity and of this size takes time, and so we expect the investigation to take anywhere between 12 and 24 months. People have asked me what they can do to help, and we know folks were out on the water that day, may have seen something. We know folks experienced the weather out there, and we'd like to hear from them. We also would like to hear from folks who have served on that vessel before, who could share photos, video, experiences on that vessel so we can learn more about that vessel. The best way to get in touch with us is via email, eyewitness@ntsb.gov. That's eyewitness@ntsb.gov. Lastly, what I'd like to say is if you would like to follow our investigation, we invite you to follow us on Twitter. The Twitter handle is @NTSB_newsroom. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is John Gellert, President and CEO of Seacor Marine. First, I'd like to express my sincere condolences to the families of the 5 crew members and contractors that were on board the Seacor Power. Our thoughts and prayers are with you. As Captain Watson mentioned, we're just at a family meeting, and it's very emotional. Families continue to have hope and prayers, and we'd like everyone to continue their thoughts and prayers for the families of those still missing. I'd also like to thank the U.S. Coast Guard for their quick and decisive response on Tuesday. Their bravery and that of Good Samaritan vessels saved 6 lives that day. We are incredibly grateful for the support they provided to the search and rescue efforts. Please know that this transition away from the Coast Guard does not change our commitment to recovering all missing in this incident and continuing to support their families during this extremely difficult time. Our focus is entirely on doing all we can to further these efforts. The recovery process will now be led by our salvage contractor, Don John Smith, which has been collaborating with the U.S. Coast Guard since Tuesday, along with the dive team from Phoenix International of Maryland. Don John and Phoenix are some of the most experienced and qualified salvers and divers in the world, and we have full confidence in their ability to safely complete the recovery mission. Phoenix divers will continue maximizing their efforts, and they will not stop until they thoroughly search the entire vessel. Additional divers have been mobilized to supplement the effort and take advantage of any improved weather window available to us. There are currently 17 divers on this operation. Throughout this process, we will continue to keep the families notified of efforts by providing direct, frequent updates on the recovery. Our focus is on communicating directly with the family members as well as respecting their privacy during this difficult time. We recognize the community is invested in this process as well, and we will share the updates as we can while respecting the privacy of the families. In the days and weeks ahead, we will work in close cooperation with the NTSB and the U.S. Coast Guard and other authorities to conduct a thorough review of this incident. We'd like to conclude again by thanking again all involved in the search and rescue process, our team members, and the extended community. Your support during this process has been invaluable as we grieve for our family and friends. We are steadfast in our efforts to return those who remain missing.
I'd like to now open the floor up for questions and answers. I'll be moderating that, so if you could please just raise your hand. And again, as a reminder, please let us know who you are and who you're with. Right here in the front. Yes, you, sir.
This is for John Geller. So, as far as the investigation, we know that weather was not cooperating earlier in the day. I'm Justin Michael, just the Weather Channel. So, weather was not cooperating earlier in the week. It has been for about, I guess, the last 48 hours in totality. How much longer will this investigation take before you're through the entire vessel and know if there are any more people in that boat?
It'll be entirely dependent on the weather. The weather and the conditions, not only on the surface, but below the surface. The currents are currently very strong, and that will determine the diving windows and when we are able to dive, we will dive continuously.
Follow-up question for you, sir, if I may. As far as that day, and the weather that day, we've spoken with other sailors who were out of different vessels. It was a warned storm. There were marine warnings. Why did that boat go out to begin with?
I can't speculate. There were warnings, but they were not warnings of the magnitude of which we encountered. The investigation will further that.
Mr. Geller, can you say what sorts of winds and seas that boat was built to withstand?
It depends on its condition. It's a condition of where the boat is, particularly whether it's jacked up, whether the legs are retracted, or whether the legs are extended. So it's a variable window depending on the configuration. When it's under transit, as you've seen, the legs were fully retracted, so that is its most vulnerable.
This is all very killing at WDSU. Who made the call or makes the call to go out in those sort of weather events? And was it a mistake in your eyes to go out in those weather conditions?
The call, the go, no-go decision is entirely the captain's. The captain can rely on us, everyone ashore, or weather reports for advice, but ultimately it's his decision. I'm not going to speculate on what the weather conditions he encountered were.
How confident are you that the remaining crew members will be found once the Coast Guard suspends their efforts this evening?
Well, they can speak for themselves. They're suspending surface operations because the likelihood of finding anybody on the surface is minimal. So it remains to be seen as we go through the vessel. To the earlier question, we're about halfway through the vessel, and we will continue that. I must add, just to the earlier point, the captain had 50 years of experience. He was a very veteran captain, almost all of the 50 years on lift boats, and he was one of our best captains and very prudent and conservative. So we were very confident that he would not have gone out if he had any doubt whatsoever.
John Zimmerman with the Times-Picayune and the Advocate. Can you talk about what the mission, what the purpose of them going out was, what they were bringing out there, what the urgency was, and were you backed up for work with the pandemic?
Well, the boat was contracted to Talos Energy to do well workover on one of their platforms, and they've contracted other companies to provide the well workover services and the equipment. The equipment from those contractors was on our boat, and this was part of a multi-month campaign for well workover and well decommissioning and some plug and abandonment. So this was just a continuation of, the vessel was about a month into that campaign.
Meg Farris from WWL-TV in New Orleans. Could you please react to Talos Energy's statement that came out Saturday saying that it was Seacor Marine who made the decision, not the deceased captain, and saying that that was where the responsibility is? And was there monetary pressure to fulfill a certain time schedule to get there at a certain time from Talos?
As I said, the decision, ultimately, the go, no-go is the captain's. The captain has full control of the vessel. The vessel is owned by Seacor Marine. It was under the control of Seacor Marine. He had our support for his decision to sail, and we have no reason to believe that there was any, that the weather they were forecasted to encounter was well within the limits of the vessel, and the weather that they ultimately encountered was well beyond the forecast, as far as we know, at this time.
follow-up, please. Will there be radio transmissions of those decisions released, and have lawsuits already been filed by family members?
I can't comment on lawsuits. There are records and communications, and we're just, as I mentioned, starting the investigation.
First of all, to WGNO in New Orleans, for several days we've heard from families heartbroken and, of course, frustrated at the search efforts. Some say that y'all weren't doing enough as a company to rescue the people off the boat. Do you feel like y'all did enough? And if so, why?
We have response plans for events such as this that are vetted annually and identified contractors. Don John Smith was the named responder in our response plan that was immediately activated. Don John Smith had divers on scene within 4 hours of the incident and have continued to increase that presence as needed and as the weather has allowed. We feel we have done everything in our power and all the resources available to continue the response as the weather permits. The weather, as you know, has been very difficult here since the incident occurred.
Kevin McGill, Associated Press, just for clarity here. Do we know the configuration of the rig at the time of the capsizing? Were the legs fully extended into the air? Had there been any attempt to lower the legs or lower any of the legs?
As far as we can make out, there is about 5 feet of the legs were fully retracted for the commencement of the voyage. As far as we can make out, there was about 5 feet of leg that was retracted from the hull, which leads us to believe the captain was trying to jack down on position for safety. But it was, as far as we can make out, is about 5 feet that has been retracted.
How long does that take to go 5 feet?
It's about a minute, about 5 feet a minute.
Please raise your hand if you're asking a question. Thank you.
And full retraction would have taken how long, Mr. Geller?
Or retraction is into the hull, so you put 5 feet out. We were in about 60 feet of water, so it would have been about 12 minutes.
How confident are you that the remaining crew members will be found inside the vessel?
I don't know. It's very difficult. The visibility is very limited down there. There's a lot of debris. The vessel is on its side, as you've seen, so I really can't speculate.
Can you talk a little bit about the training efforts that the crew went through before they were out there on the water?
The crew is annually has certificates for all sorts of training, safety of life at sea, all sorts of medical certificates that they have to go through on a regular basis. All certificates were up to date. The crew is one of our most veteran, experienced crews. They were very familiar with this vessel. They'd sailed on it for a long time, so they were fully. In our crew, it was 9 of the 18. I can't speak for the contractors, but anyone riding the boat has to have a level of training.
Brian, Vicki from Garden and Gun. What kind of support was Seacor extending to the families of the crew, and for how long?
We've been extending support from the beginning. We've, anything from hotel rooms to meals to grief counseling, and we will continue for as long as necessary.
Gentleman in the back of the hat.
Yeah, I was a captain for 42 years offshore, and we get wet on the weather side off the ball, the weather for 3 to 5 days. And I know how long it takes to get to the river. There's no way he put the contact on these kids to concerned about the weather.
He was not concerned about the weather. He did not. As far as we can see, and to a point about only 5 feet of leg being extended, it was very rapid. He was first focused on saving his vessel and all the people on board. And
Sir, are you with the media?
No, sir.
Okay. This is media opportunity, so if you're with the media, then please raise your hand. If not, we would be happy to talk with you afterwards. Ma'am?
Sir, the 6 people who were rescued, have they confirmed, were they privy to the captain making that final decision to leave? And if after the Coast Guard to give us the specifics as to why at sunset the search will be ended?
The crew, one of the survivors was on the bridge with the captain. We have not started a full investigation with him, but he would have been involved with the process to go. The Reports from the vessel were all normal up to very shortly before the incident occurred. Nothing that would have given reason to anticipate what happened.
Even the weather.
Especially the weather.
And the follow-up was the Coast Guard decision to end today.
Suspension is always a difficult decision for us. There are a host of factors, as you might imagine, that go into deciding something like this, but the overriding factor is a person's, or the probability that a person can survive given the conditions that they're experiencing, in this case at sea, over a given period of time. And in fact, we extended the search because we could not be certain, given how difficult conditions were out there, exactly when folks may have entered the water.
This maritime disaster. Going back to 2010, we had the Deepwater Horizon. I believe 11 people died during that. We're not at that number yet with this disaster, but is there a belief among the officials here and the agencies here that this could become the largest maritime disaster, at least in recent history?
You know, I don't want to speculate on that. As I told you before, we just come from over here from talking to the families, and those folks are still holding out hope, and they have a lot of faith that things will turn out. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah. Those folks are still holding out hope, and they have faith that things may yet still work out. So I don't want to be speaking in that way about this. Now, Drew, if you want to talk to the historic nature of this.
I understood your question, and I think to discuss magnitude of an accident, number one would be premature, and number two, it doesn't have a lot of relevance from our perspective. What's relevant is this was a major disaster, and what's relevant is we want to prevent it from happening again. Certainly, in the ways we've studied other accidents and tried to prevent future accidents. So, again, I think it's too early to say what the magnitude of the accident will be, but suffices to say this is a major accident that we need to take seriously.
Anybody for the CEO of Seacor, whoever would like to answer this, are looking at the safety protocols of the time. And again, I understand this is very premature, but is Seacor already looking at a change or an enhancement to those safety protocols to prevent something like this from happening again?
Certainly we will be looking at everything. We will be reviewing everything and really every lesson learned from this. And we know, there will definitely be some amendments to our procedures based on what we find.
I have time for one more question, so is there anybody here who has not asked a question that would like to? Hearing none, I have one right here. Last one, please, sir.
My question's for the NTSB.
Thank you.
Once again, Chris Valti with WGNO in New Orleans. Can you explain what the process will be once you recover the vessel from the water?
Sure. So the salvage plan for the vessel is run through the company and approved by the Coast Guard. Once that happens, we will have an opportunity to investigate the vessel, potentially go aboard the vessel, and we will again go through the vessel inch by inch to see what we can find out.
Do you have a follow-up? Thank you very much. I will remain on hand to best direct any questions that you may have. I won't be doing any interviews, but I will try and get you the information, at least point in the right direction. Thank you very much for coming today.
The time now is